What if the brightest star suddenly spoke about the darkest truth of life? What if Jungkook, the golden Maknae of BTS, broke the silence, not with a song but with words about death, fear, and meaning? Welcome back to Jungkook Lover. Before we begin, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear is shaking armies around the world. Was this just a deep reflection, or a message hidden in plain sight? Why did Jungkook ask for privacy at the very moment fans grew more worried than ever? Stay with us because this is not just news, this is a moment that changed everything. The world did not stop when Jungkook spoke about death, but it certainly held its breath. In an era where idols are expected to shine endlessly, to smile through exhaustion, and to exist as symbols rather than humans, Jungkook's words landed like a quiet earthquake. There was no dramatic announcement, no stage lights, no choreography, just a moment, a voice, and a topic many avoid but everyone feels: death, not as an ending to fear but as a mirror to life itself. Almost instantly, global timelines exploded, screenshots spread faster than context, headlines raced ahead of understanding. Fans asked the same question in thousands of languages at once: why would Jungkook talk about death now? For years, Jungkook has been called the Golden Maknae, a title that sounds flattering but carries invisible weight. Gold does not rust, does not fade, does not break, or so people expect. Yet behind that image is a human being who grew up under constant observation, whose youth unfolded in front of cameras, whose mistakes, silence, and even breathing were analyzed. When someone like Jungkook speaks about death, it is never heard as a neutral thought. It becomes a signal, a symbol, a storm of interpretations. But what many missed in the rush was the tone. This was not despair. This was not a goodbye. This was reflection. Jungkook spoke about death the way philosophers do, the way artists do when they confront time, loss, and meaning. He spoke about how thinking about the end can make the present sharper, more honest, more precious. In his words, life felt fragile, not hopeless, temporary, not empty. And in that vulnerability, fans saw something rare, an idol asking to be seen not as a myth but as a person. Yet alongside those reflections came one sentence that changed everything. A quiet request. A plea almost whispered between lines: please respect my privacy. That request is where the story truly begins. Because ARMY is not just a fandom, it is an emotional ecosystem. Millions of people who have grown alongside Jungkook, who attach memories, healing, and identity to his music. When he asked for privacy, it clashed with instinct. Fans wanted to protect him, to analyze every word, to make sure he was okay. Concern came from love, but love, when unchecked, can become pressure. Within hours, debates erupted. Some fans argued that silence was the greatest form of respect. Others believed discussion was necessary, that ignoring the topic could be more dangerous than talking about it. Media outlets added fuel, stripping nuance for clicks, reframing reflection as alarm. The mystery grew not because of what Jungkook said, but because of what people feared he meant. Historically, Jungkook has always communicated emotionally through music rather than speeches. His voice carries warmth, longing, joy, and pain without explanation. So when he chose words instead of melody, it felt intentional. It felt heavy, and it forced fans to confront an uncomfortable truth: idols are not immune to existential thoughts just because they are successful. In South Korea and beyond, conversations about mortality are often private, even taboo. For someone of Jungkook's influence to touch the subject, even gently, was bound to disrupt cultural comfort zones. Yet disruption is not always destruction. Sometimes it is an invitation to maturity. Armies across the globe began sharing their own interpretations, not as rumors but as reflections. Many said Jungkook's words made them pause and reconsider their own lives. Others admitted they felt seen, not because of sadness but because of honesty. The idea that someone so admired also thinks deeply about life's impermanence created connection, not fear. Still, the line between connection and intrusion remained thin. Jungkook did not ask for silence forever, he asked for space. Space to exist without being dissected, space to think without being diagnosed, space to speak as a human without being turned into a headline shaped by panic. And that is where responsibility shifts, not to the artist but to the audience. In the digital age, privacy is fragile, especially for global icons. Every pause becomes suspicious, every thoughtful sentence becomes a theory. But Jungkook's request challenged fans to prove something deeper than loyalty: emotional respect. To trust that reflection does not always equal crisis, to understand that talking about death can be a way of affirming life. As days passed, the initial shock softened into discussion. Thoughtful essays replaced reactionary posts. Fans reminded each other that Jungkook is not alone, not fragile in the way rumors suggested, but thoughtful in a way that deserves dignity. The narrative began to shift from fear to understanding. Yet one question refuses to disappear. Why now? Some believe Jungkook is entering a new artistic phase, one where themes become heavier, more philosophical, less polished for comfort. Others think this moment reflects a generation of artists who grew up too fast and are now reclaiming their inner voice. And some fans wonder if this was simply Jungkook being honest at the exact moment honesty felt necessary. The truth is no one knows, and perhaps that is the point. Not every statement needs decoding, not every emotion needs ownership by the public. Jungkook spoke, he reflected, he asked for privacy, the rest is choice, ours, not his. What remains undeniable is the impact. For a brief moment, the world stopped seeing Jungkook as an untouchable star and started seeing him as a person navigating the same questions everyone eventually faces. And maybe that is why this moment feels so powerful, because it stripped away fantasy and replaced it with reality. A reality where idols can think deeply. A reality where fans must listen carefully. A reality where respect matters more than speculation. As the noise fades and only the meaning remains, ARMY stands at a crossroads. Will this moment be remembered as another viral misunderstanding, or as the time fans chose empathy over curiosity? And here's the question now igniting debates across the fandom. Was Jungkook simply reflecting on life like any thoughtful artist? Or was this the quiet beginning of a new chapter that ARMY is not yet ready to face? What do you think? As the conversation continued to ripple across continents, something unexpected happened. The noise began to split into two very different reactions. On one side were those who demanded answers, explanations, statements, reassurance. On the other were fans who chose stillness, believing that silence could also be a form of love. This divide revealed more about the world than about Jungkook himself. What Jungkook said was simple, yet its simplicity made it powerful. He did not dramatize death. He did not frame it as an escape or a threat. He spoke about it as an inevitable truth that forces people to reflect on how they live, how they love, and how they value time. In a culture obsessed with eternal youth and constant productivity, those words felt almost rebellious. Industry insiders quietly noted that this moment marked a shift. Jungkook was no longer just responding to expectations placed on him, he was defining his own emotional boundaries. By asking for privacy, he challenged the unspoken contract between celebrity and audience, reminding the world that access does not equal ownership. ARMY, known for its unity, faced an uncomfortable test. Could a fandom built on closeness also respect distance? Could devotion exist without constant interpretation? Many fans answered by amplifying messages of respect rather than speculation. Hashtags calling for calm and empathy began trending alongside the more sensational ones, slowly changing the tone of the discourse. Psychologists and cultural commentators weighed in, not to analyze Jungkook's mental state, but to discuss why society reacts so intensely when public figures speak about mortality. They pointed out that when idols acknowledge life's fragility, it disrupts the fantasy of perfection that fans unconsciously rely on. Jungkook's words shattered an illusion, and in doing so made his presence feel more real than ever. What made this moment even more striking was what did not follow. There was no clarification post, no apology, no attempt to soften or retract his words. That absence spoke volumes. It suggested confidence, not recklessness. It suggested that Jungkook trusted his audience enough to sit with discomfort rather than demand instant resolution. Behind the scenes, sources close to the industry emphasized that Jungkook remains focused on growth, artistically and personally. Reflection, they said, has become part of his creative process. Thinking about life's limits has not dimmed his passion, if anything, it has sharpened it. Mortality, when viewed through an artist's lens, can become fuel rather than fear. As days passed, fans began connecting dots not to build theories but to build meaning. Lyrics from past songs resurfaced, not as warnings but as evidence that Jungkook has always been introspective beneath the surface. This was not a sudden change, it was a continuation finally spoken aloud. The request for privacy, once controversial, began to feel like a lesson. Not every emotion needs a public verdict. Not every thought is an announcement. Jungkook reminded the world that depth does not require explanation and that respect sometimes means stepping back. Still, the emotional weight of the moment lingers. Because when someone with Jungkook's influence speaks about death, even thoughtfully, it forces millions to confront their own relationship with time, loss, and meaning. That is not something that fades overnight. The question now is no longer what Jungkook meant.